Welcome to the Innovation Conversation, a podcast about innovators, both in business and real life. Hosted by myself, Ricardo Pascual, and Harry McDonough. This podcast is also sponsored by ODEV Tech. ODEV Tech is your premier software development partner. Make sure you check them out at odev.tech. The podcast is also sponsored by Notion.so. Notion is offering 6 months for free for new users. Make sure you check out our website, thestartupevents.co.uk, to redeem this offer. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Innovation Conversation. Now, today we are joined by Stephanie Melodia. Stephanie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, Stephanie, you do quite a lot of stuff, so would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yeah, let's get the hardest question out the way first. I am indeed doing a lot of stuff at the moment, so my intros definitely need refining. But basically, I ran my own marketing consultancy for about 6 years, award-winning, working predominantly with startups, entrepreneurs. Over the period of 5.5 years with my last business, my team and I actually counted that we worked with 100 plus founders and their scaling businesses. So that's kind of my world. We work with some of the UK's top clients in the top UK startups in the country, with work featured in the likes of Forbes, Sifted, TechCrunch. And basically since that chapter, I'm now embracing the portfolio career and I'm loving it. So I do some fractional consultancy work with a handful of clients. I travel around the world doing some public speaking, which is really exciting. I host my own podcast called Strategy and Tragedy, so maybe check that out after this one. And I am a mentor to MBA students in entrepreneurship. So I'm keeping out of trouble, but essentially my whole world is entrepreneurship. So I'm really excited to dive into conversation with you today, Ricardo, and hopefully give your audience, your listeners, some inspiration, pearls of wisdom, and more importantly, some practical tips that's going to help them start and scale their business.
Yeah, I always love interviewing other podcasters because they're always better hosts than I am. To see the show, which is awesome. That being said, how did you get started in this whole thing? I mean, obviously you have a marketing background, so what was that journey like to actually launching your own business?
With my own business, it was definitely had that entrepreneurial itch for a while. I actually started my first business out of art school when I was around, 18. Can't remember exactly how old I was, but I used to sneak into the basement of my art school and screen print t-shirts and model them on my little sister and then flog them via Facebook. So this is like going back a little bit. I don't even think Instagram was invented back then, and Facebook was like the hottest new thing. I think it just taken over MySpace. So for any of my other like elder millennials, you'll know what I'm talking about. But that wasn't real. That was kind of the first pancake, as we say. It wasn't really a real business. It was literally just me screen printing my t-shirts in art school. But I guess that was kind of the initial kind of like, oh, I can create something, I can produce a thing like a physical product, and I can leverage our internet age in which we're in now to sell these items and actually shift these products. Anyway, I didn't go off into like pure entrepreneurship. I then started out my career in the creative industries, worked agency side for many years. I then transitioned in-house because I really wanted to see it from both sides of the fence. And it was kind of a box check for me. It was kind of like, okay, I have worked across various roles in agency and ad land for the best part of a decade. One of the main roles that I actually had in those agencies was business development. And so I think that was where that sort of entrepreneurial spirit kind of comes out as well. And then it was like, okay, now I've seen it on the other side of the fence. I've had this in-house role leading marketing for, at the time, they were a top 10 global app developer, so a tech company. And it was just kind of like a number of different things coalesced at the right time to make me say, let's just go and do it. And what those specific things were at the time, as I kind of recall and turn my mind back to that time, was going back on the interview bandwagon. I was looking for a new job and I absolutely hated it. I really, really hated interviewing. I really hated dealing with recruiters. It was such a painful, horrible experience.
Wow,
and I don't
nice people normally. I don't know why.
Yeah, exactly. What a surprise. Newsflash, exactly. And look, I know that no one finds that an enjoyable experience to begin with, but I think there was something about that particular, stab at it again, like going back on the interview circuit. I was like, this is just even more painful than like the previous times. And this was all before I was about to turn 29. So for me, it was also like turning 30, like the big 30 was such a milestone for me. We've obviously got things like the Forbes 30 under 30. So that, I guess, was sort of what created a little bit more of that sense of urgency, which I think even the most motivated and self-disciplined among us, I think we still need like a trigger. We still need a catalyst. Like something still has to happen to take us off the grind, to take us out of the usual day to day and be like, no, let's just go for it. Like the time is now, let's do it.
Interesting. I guess when you're born an entrepreneur, you always have that itch, right? You need to scratch the itch one way or the other. And then whenever you're applying for a job, you think, you know what? It's not really what I want. I can do this with my eyes closed, but at the same time, I need something else, right?
It's just not right. And I think just like doubling down on a really key phrase you just mentioned there, which was like, if you're born an entrepreneur, I think that opens up an interesting discussion as well. Like, I don't believe that like you're a born entrepreneur or you're not. I believe that actually all of us, absolutely every single one of us, have these entrepreneurial traits. I believe that we're all creative in some way or another. I can't stand it when people say like, oh, I'm not a creative person. It's like, you are. Like, it's just a lie that either you or someone else in your life has told you. And I think that desire to like be creative and have a purpose is something that is so deeply human to each and every one of us. I think where the step into like actual entrepreneurship happens, I think, is when we go into the risk tolerance. And part of that risk, like taking that leap and taking action, comes a recognition that we don't have all the time in the world. And so it goes back to what I was saying around the urgency. Either something in your life happens to create that trigger, whether it's, in my instance, like the milestone of turning 30 and wanting to start my business before that arbitrary milestone, whether you lose your job, whether you're made redundant, whether like you just happen to meet a co-founder that comes to you with an idea. Tragically, and I hope this doesn't happen to most of the listeners, what I have also come across is something very tragic that's happened to someone in their lives, whether they've lost a loved one, for example, and that's sort of given them a wake-up call to realize we do not have all the time in the world. We do not have limitless like time. We're not going to live forever. And not only that, but also, I don't know exactly, who's listening in on this, but if you're in your 20s or 30s, it's such a blessing and a curse where death feels like such a long way away. But at the same time, your 20s and 30s are such prime time. These decades, these are apples and oranges that we're comparing against each other here. It's like someone in their 20s does not have the energy and the risk tolerance to someone maybe in their 50s or 60s. Like, obviously it's a sweeping generalization here. Of course, if you are in your 50s and 60s, you've got experience, you've got everything else. But I would argue actually the younger the better. The younger the better, because you've got time on your side, you've got energy on your side, and you're in a position, usually more often than not, to take more risk. So if you are in your 20s and 30s listening to this, I'm here to tell you one thing, and that is you're going to die one day. So start your business now.
There's a whole thing about the Stoics. Was it memento mori? Like,
yes, exactly.
Remember you're gonna die, right? And that's very powerful, but also very scary. It's like,
exactly.
You're not live forever, so you might as well make the good choices.
But it needs to be scary. Like, we need to have these deeper emotions to impact us enough in order to take action. Because if it isn't scary enough, you will stay in your comfort zone, and comfort is a killer. So as much as nobody likes to talk about it, and it's obviously a taboo and it's horrible, and we're not gonna, no one wants to go there. I'm going there within the first 5-10 minutes of this conversation, because it's reality, it's real, it's one thing that unites every single one of us. We are not here forever. And so, when we look at things like money, I need to like raise funds for my business, or, am I going to bootstrap? Have I got enough savings? Whatever it is, it's like one thing you won't ever get back is your time.
But that's the thing, is that perception of we only realize how much time we had and how much time we lost when it's too late.
Exactly.
And when we spend the whole weekend, for example, now's the time because it's winter, obviously, and a lot of people spend a lot of time binge watching whatever it is on Netflix, right? What we don't realize is that the pleasure we get from that is not even equivalent to the pleasure we would get from being our own bosses or from doing something we're actually very passionate about. And that's, you're never going to get that time back. But yeah,
It's the
it's hard.
difference. It's the difference between, look, I don't want to condone hustle culture. Like, I was Netflix binging last night as well, right? So it's
Nothing wrong with it, but nothing wrong with it. But yeah,
right. So it's like we still need to relax and switch off and recharge 1,000%. So I think it's important to recognize, are we binging Netflix for that relaxation, or are we doing it to escape a day-to-day grind that we don't like, that we hate? Exactly, right? So I think that's the thing, is like, if there's something wrong with your current situation, use that time productively to get out of that situation instead of Netflix binging. Or if you are in the grind and you are in those early days, in the same breath, don't beat yourself up and don't feel guilty for taking that time out, because you're no good to anyone if you're burnt out.
Brings me to I always love asking this question, which is, I know you do a lot of stuff, and how do you manage to balance things out? Because we all have horrible days, weeks, months where things are just too much, and there's like, you keep on having dodgeballs thrown at you. So how do you manage that? How do you find that balance?
That's a great question. I love that question, Ricardo. So one of my favorite sayings in the world of entrepreneurship is, startups don't die, they drown. And what that forces overwhelmed entrepreneurs to do is to learn the art of prioritization. So going back to that phrase, startups don't die, they drown. You will constantly have things to do all the time. Like, we are all chronically busy. We never have enough time. We said this before we started recording, like, we're both super busy, we're plate spinning, we're not getting enough sleep. Like, everyone relates to this. So it forces you, like, the reality is like, you'll get to a point where you realize you can't do everything, and there just literally are not the hours in the day. And what I talk about more than time management is energy management. So I do believe that if you set yourself up for success, where you get a good night's sleep, you're well nourished, you're well rested. I know that's going to sound like a distant dream to a lot of people, but if you take care of those basics and those fundamentals, and you set yourself up for having like a very highly productive 1 hour, you're going to get so much more done. You're going to make so much more progress than an 8-hour slog where you're just trying to like get through the day, right? So I think that's one thing, is like, energy management versus time management. Don't neglect those fundamentals of a good night's rest, of eating right, of getting in the right headspace, to then when you're ready to attack the day, you're there and you're operating at your most optimum, in your most optimum mode. Coming back to the art of prioritization, this is something that each of us need to recognize, is because there are limited hours in the day and the to-do list is never ending, you're never going to get to the end of it. You're never going to get to the end of it. A revolutionary book for me that absolutely changed my whole view on this, I cannot recommend this book highly enough, 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. There was this one line in this book that really switched on this light bulb in my head, which was, you are never going to get to the end of this to-do list. Your inbox, by the way, your email inbox is everyone else's to-do list. It's not your to-do list.
That's also true, yeah.
So recognizing both the fact that there are limited hours in the day, and going more deeply what we were talking about before, there's only limited life that we've got on this planet with this limited time that we have, whether it's your day, your week, your month, or your lifetime. These are constraints that are going to have to force us to master the art of prioritization. So it's taking that step back and recognizing, I'm not going to get everything done today. So ask yourself, what are going to be the biggest needle movers? What if I manage to do one thing today? And that's another book as well. I can't remember the name of it, but that's another book which talks about just like the one thing. I think that is the title of it.
I actually think I have it somewhere. So
yeah, right. It's one of these like
the one thing,
startup classics. Exactly, right. So what's one thing that you can do today that is going to move the needle in the direction that you want to take it? The other great exercise that I discovered working with an amazing business coach with my last company was do a brain dump of all of the tasks, activities that take up the time of your day, like everything, like responding to emails, scheduling appointments, being on podcasts, working on proposals, like whatever it is, like write it all down. And next to it, assign a value of that task. Like, how much is this task actually worth? And a good way to actually quantify how much it is to think, if you had to outsource that particular task, how much would it cost them to do? on like an hourly rate, for example. So is this an admin task that, for example, like could be outsourced to a VA for £20 an hour, let's say, for example, right? You go through that, and the tasks that are high value that only you can do yourself, whether that is building your personal brand, being the face of the business, networking, pitching to customers, pitching to investors, those are things you cannot outsource. Those are your top priority tasks as the founder of the business. And so that also provides you with that clarity to say, okay, everything outside of that, what can I do to either eliminate, delegate, or automate? Eliminate, delegate, automate. Can I just take this off my plate entirely? Does it really need to be done? Is it a valuable task? Or is it something that, if I'm really honest with myself, is something that I just like to do, or I've just got into the habit of doing? Do you really need to do it? Delegate. Can I delegate? I said to a VA before, is it a VA? Is it a social media manager? Is it a strategist? Is it whatever? Like, are there other people out there that maybe can even do it better than I can do it myself? If it's valuable enough, and if there's going to be enough of an ROI on that particular task, then it's worth outsourcing it. So I think there's also kind of a money mindset with this as well, is like, yes, it's going to cost to outsource to somebody, but if it frees you up to do the more valuable needle moving tasks, then it's worth it. And then finally, the automation. Are there things that you can automate? In this day and age, yes, there is so much that we can do to automate. So look at, in that instance, that would be looking specifically at repeatable systems that you can put some automation kind of tools in to, again, take that off your plate. So in summary, knowing that we're all so busy, we've got never-ending to-do lists, is number one, recognize you're never going to get to the end of this to-do list. It's never ending. That needs to force you to master the art of prioritization. So where do you need to focus? What's the one thing that's going to be a needle mover for you today, tomorrow, this week? And just understand that the rest is going to have to slide. Within that is go through that exercise of mapping out all of these tasks and activities that take up your time and look at what can you eliminate, automate, delegate in the process, because startups don't die, they drown.
Interesting. Very powerful. All right. What do you do when you have a horrendous day? You personally, like, how do you get your mojo back, so to speak?
Horrendous in terms of like back-to-back calls, or like something horrible happening to me?
No, as in you hit a wall. You hit a wall in your business, you hit a wall in the way you're doing things. What do you do then?
Okay. All right. Love this. I do. And I've learned this the hard way. It is a hard lesson learned. I do the opposite of what you feel you should do in those moments. So in those moments where I've got a horrendous day, all I want to do is like power through. And I'm just like, I'm trying to do this, trying to do that. Someone's asked me for a call. Okay, yeah, what do you want? Like, pick up the phone. And then more emails are coming in. And I'm like, yeah. I'm just trying to like get through this. What's happening is not only are you running yourself into the ground, because there's also this interesting research around multitasking and how much that drains the brain and how long it takes to like refocus when you're just like spinning all these plates. I'm the worst at this, by the way. As much as I'm here like preaching and giving advice, I am also the worst at it. So I think that's also where I'm kind of weirdly the best person to give the advice on that front, because I'm such a like multitasking plate spinner and I just want to like crack on with it. It's the worst thing you can do, because not only are you driving yourself into the ground by mentally exhausting yourself, but also it creates a bit of a snowball effect, because the more that you are like, yeah, okay, and you get back to people quickly and you respond to their emails and you pick up the phone and Slack messages are coming in and you respond to that email, guess what? The quicker they're coming back at you. So when I say the best thing to do is the opposite of what you instinctively want to do in that moment, it's taking a step back, it's going outside, it's taking a walk, and then coming back at it with fresh eyes, recharged, and with focus. The great analogy here that I always love to use is, Ricardo, have you ever been skiing or snowboarding before? Any like winter sports?
I've been on the slopes. They taught me how to brake, and then I said I want to go up the hill. They said no, because you're going to kill yourself and 10 other people. So that was it. That's my whole skiing.
That was your experience. So was this skiing or snowboarding? Sorry.
It was skiing, and apparently I have a gigantic foot. because the boots were too tight. I was in horrible pain for a good 45 minutes. I said, no, it's not fun. So yeah.
You discovered you've got a big foot in the process.
Yeah.
All right, that's hilarious. What I discovered, so I haven't done skiing, I've done snowboarding. I'm more of a board sports type of person because I've got what's called a low center of gravity, Ricardo. You've met me in person, so you've seen how small I am. So board sports work well for me, right? Like I've got a low center of gravity. What I learned with snowboarding is and for any other like snowboarders here, you'll get what I mean, but I'll describe it if you haven't anyway, right? As soon as you start to turn the board down the slopes, it might be similar with skiing as well, right? So you can let me know. As soon as you start to turn, you go faster and faster down the slope, right? Because you're at that angle and you're going down and you're going like down that kind of precipice. When you're in that moment, every single cell in your body instinctively wants to pull back. Because like you want to slow down. You want to be like, oh, it's going too fast. Like I want to pull back. Like hang on a minute. Like let me get it. That's the worst thing that you could do. Because actually what happens is, this is where there's a really clear parallel in this analogy here, is as you're pulling yourself back, you're straining your body and it's just not a great angle for you because you're like pulling down one side and you're scrunching up down the other. But also by doing that, you're going faster. You're going faster down the slope because you're actually becoming more aerodynamic by leaning back. But like you feel like you want to lean back because you want to slow down. And so it's the exact same here with the emails and the messages and getting back. It's like you're making it go faster down the slope. And what you want to do is you want to slow down. And so with the snowboarding, what you want to do, you want to go against that instinct and you want to lean into it even more to cut the curve, to cut that like S shape, to make that cut. So you go back to being like at a perpendicular angle to the slope, right? I'm trying to describe it verbally if people aren't seeing all of my hand gestures and all my movements with this. So you want to lean into it to cut and curve so that you make that S shape gradually like down the slope. I hope people are getting that, are getting how I'm explaining it. So that's the analogy here, right? Is instead of like leaning away and wanting to slow down, you actually need to kind of do the opposite to what you think instinctively you need to do and just kind of be like, right, I need to peace out for a sec. I need to take a break. I need to go for a walk, get some fresh air, recharge, re-energize, and refocus. That's the key thing.
So your advice is don't go in a straight line down the slopes.
Never go in a straight line. I don't think any of the entrepreneurial listeners here would be going in a straight line anyway.
Yeah, and I was trying to do the same thing in the ski slopes. That's probably why they didn't let me. But yeah, no, I completely get that. Now, tell me about this podcast of yours, because obviously it's quite successful. You have quite a lot of viewers and listeners. I know there's a country in the Nordics which has crazy viewership numbers, which is always good. How do you get started with the podcast? I mean, I know how you get started with the podcast, but tell the audience how you got started with
How you guys about it? Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's called Strategy and Tragedy. And as the name indicates, it is very much shining a light on the realities of what it takes to be an entrepreneur, similar to what you're doing here with this great show too, Ricardo. And where it was born from was, again, I mentioned in the intro, I ran my own marketing consultancy for startups. And what that did was it put me in a very privileged position of being at the epicenter of all of these entrepreneurs. Not only that, but something else I need to mention to your listeners too is that I'm also a VC scout for an early stage venture capital firm called Ada Ventures, and they focus on early stage, pre-launch, pre-seed startups. So if anyone's interested, if anyone wants to check them out and send me their pitch deck, I would absolutely love to take a look at it. And so going back,
good idea. This was the worst idea you could have had. Like, goodbye inbox. That's it. It's going to be completely overflowing and stuff now.
Send it to me.
But yes, please. If you're interested, please send. If you're listening to this, please send it. Of course. But yes.
My email is Stephanie STEPHANIE at Bloom BLOOLTD.co.uk. Stephanie at bloomltd.co.uk. I would love to see your pitch deck if you want to send it over to me. So that was basically the context. So I'm sat at the epicenter of all of these founders. Some are fundraising, some are scaling, some are venture backed, some are like on their way to unicorn status. And I also have the VC hat on as a scout for the venture capital firm that I mentioned. And, what I was seeing is alongside this actual work that we were doing behind closed doors, there was this really contrasted dichotomy where you would then go onto LinkedIn or you would get like a sifted newsletter and you would see the shiny veneer, and entrepreneurship has been so glamorized. And it was just two completely different worlds, right? Like you go onto LinkedIn and you see the humble bragging, you see that someone has raised like £10 million for their business, or someone's like doubled the size of their team or whatever. And I just think it's so easy to get that green-eyed monster flared up, to think that everyone else has got it figured out, that everyone else is doing better than you are. And it's not the case at all. It's not the case whatsoever. So Strategy and Tragedy was born from that, which is the highs, the lows, the realities of what it actually takes to launch and scale a business. And I'm very, very happy. I'm so incredibly, like, I don't even believe it. I'm very happy to say that the show is now in the top 20 of business charts in the UK. It's top 5 for female hosted shows, because yet again, it's another male dominated space for some reason. So not hard for me to be in the top 5. And I've had some...
That's not entirely true. I'm sorry, but...
You're too kind, Ricardo. You're lovely. And I'm really, really happy to say that, like, one of the best things about the show is the guests that I've been able to interview. So I've had the likes of Simon Squibb is maybe one of the more famous names, Nell Daly, Matt Lerner, Lottie White, Maya Raichura, Maxine Laceby, Simon Franks, Ranbir Arora, just like the list goes on and on and on, right? So I'm not sure if any of these names are familiar to any of your listeners.
Maxine, I heard her, she's the collagen lady, right?
Yeah, cool. You've heard of her. So Maxine Laceby, she is about to be 60 years old. And so this is another thing that I love to do.
And great skin, by the way. That's the most impressive thing. It really does actually work, yeah.
Yeah, actually does work. So she is a fantastic poster girl for her business. Absolutely. And I'm really, I'm really keen to prioritize diversity on the show as well. And diversity doesn't just mean gender and race, but it also means ability and neurodiversity and age. So, I've had someone as young as, in their early 20s, again, Forbes 30 under 30 founder, to the likes of Maxine. She's definitely not the oldest, she's about to be 60 years old, but I've also had like Nigel Morris, I think he's 67. So, I want to make sure that there is that breadth and that diversity of guests on there. But I mean, yeah, that's a great example. Like Maxine Laceby, she started the business from her kitchen, literally. She remortgaged her house. She had kids. She was divorced. And so going back to that risk tolerance, right? It's like you know that saying of like, oh, go the extra mile, it's never crowded there. Actually, there's a parallel here with like the risk. Like the more risk you take, the less crowded it's going to be, because not everyone can escape that comfort zone. So the fact that she, was ballsy enough to remortgage her house, I'm not saying everyone should do that. And I'm also not saying that it's definitely going to work out if you do that. Like it's a risk. It's a risk for a reason. But, the bigger the swing you take, it's risk versus reward, isn't it? So that was a great episode. So definitely listen to that interview if you're interested. After this one, after you've already subscribed to Ricardo's show first.
No, but I completely get what you're saying about when you interview different people. The things you get out of them is actually super powerful, super insightful, because you get to talk with them and they actually tell you about, their hopes, their aspirations, their dreams, but also their pain points, what they've been struggling with, how they manage to overcome failures before that.
Yeah.
And being able to listen to that. And I mean, there's tons of podcasts, I think I'm blessed to be able to do that. I'm pretty sure you feel the same way, which is it's even better than reading a book, because you actually get to talk to the author straight away, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love doing podcasts.
I love that. And I think with the diversity of the guests, it's important for obvious reasons in representation, but also in terms of my listeners are also, they're so diverse too. So one might resonate more with Maxine, one might resonate more with Maya Raichura or Simon Franks or Simon Squibb or whoever. So there's that, but there's also who I am as a person as well. Like I'm so interested. I have such a voracious appetite for hearing these different stories from different walks of life. And I think that if you have that mental ability to take certain pieces of advice and insights from different people, like of course, Nigel Morris's story, he's a white guy born in the 60s. Like I'm not going to completely relate to his journey, but I'm like open-minded and flexible enough to pick certain elements of what he's done and what he's learned and apply that to myself. So I hope that my listeners can do that as well.
But what's interesting about, diversity is that, not diversity per se, but what's interesting when you interview a lot of people is that regardless of where they're coming from and, whatever background they have, they kind of always face the same challenges.
Yeah.
So they still need to manage risk. They still need to manage a lot of setbacks. They still need to have a dream and an ambition. And what they start off, it's never what they're going to end up with.
Yeah.
So it's that's a common
Still
thread.
adversity. Yeah. I mean, what I do feel compelled to say at that point is the race is not the same for everyone. Yes, we do come up against adversity, but we have seen, only 2% of VC funding went to women last year, for example. And so there are unconscious biases, and it is a harder fight for some more than others. And I think that's where stories of women, female founders, or people from different backgrounds, from ethnic minorities or whatever, like anything that kind of goes against that is even more inspirational, right? Because what we need to be careful of, and this is what I always try and toe this line between, yes, you're absolutely right. Everyone has gone through their own challenges, their own kind of squiggly journey. It has been harder for some more than others, just due to the way that the world works and people's unconscious bias and stuff. But what I want to make sure I end this note on is that they don't assume victimhood in that process. So they don't allow that to get in their way. So for the likes of Maxine Laceby or Lottie White, they are proving that they are, they're outliers for a reason, and they're not letting that story get in the way of their success. So that's kind of the line I want to toe here, which is recognize, is like the recognition that it's harder for some more than others, but at the same time, don't let that stop you, and don't assume victimhood along the way.
Yeah, but that's a powerful message, isn't it? Just saying we all have our issues and keep on pushing forward. That's quite strong. I think. Now, when it comes to advice for startups, I'm sure you've seen many startups doing many things, immensely wrong. What are the top tips you would give for a startup just getting started? Listening to the podcast, say, let me get some insights. What do you actually advise them on in the beginning? Because we kind of heard your I guess your metaphor or your analogy between you kind of drown in problems. So what are the top 5 things?
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. All right. Well, I've got different pearls of wisdom that I can give entrepreneurs depending on where they're at exactly in the journey. If you are starting out, if you're kind of early days, actually, let me start from, if you're thinking, I'm going to go even earlier. Okay. I'm going to try and give like one pearl of wisdom for like each stage. If you are like, you haven't even started, you're thinking about maybe doing something, you've got an entrepreneurial itch, you think, cool, like this is for me, I don't want the day job anymore, I want to set up something. What I would say is that people put way too much emphasis on the idea. People think they need to have either a great idea or they need to have something that hasn't been done before, something that's really unique. That's completely wrong. That is a myth that I want to bust here on this show. A successful business, the idea is almost the least to do with it. The important thing that you want to prioritize if you're trying to come up with a business idea, solving somebody's problem. So entrepreneurship is not about you, it's about them. This is like newsflash. It's not about you, it's about your customers, it's about the market. So instead of asking yourself, what's a good enough business idea for me to launch my first company, instead ask yourself, what's a problem that I'm solving? And what's a problem that I'm solving for somebody that's painful enough that they're willing to pay money for it? So that's kind of the piece of advice with like just getting started. Linked to that, I would say, like when you are sort of early days, you're kind of launched, is continue along that vein of market validation. So when people say like talk to people, it's not even talking to people, talking to customers. It's listening. It's listening to the market. It's listening to what you want. We have got tools that enable us to do that more easily these days. With social media, with performance marketing, there's ways you can go about testing ideas. And what I would say is that to give you a solid, clear framework, to give that some structure, because I'm sure you've got lots of different ideas and things to test out. It's like, okay, where do we even begin with that? List out all the things that you want to test with your business, basically questions that you have unanswered. List them all out. Like, do we know who our target audience is? Do we know like how much they want to pay? Do we know which element of our core value proposition they're going to resonate with the most? Like, put down all these questions that you don't know, like brain dump them into a sheet. And then what you want to do is you want to give that a score of like, how vital is this to my business? And what's my level of certainty against it? and use that as a way to direct how we prioritize what we go about testing. So I would say that kind of piece of advice then, as you're just getting started, is to have quite a methodical approach to finding things out. And I think as an early stage entrepreneur, you're more of a detective than anything else. So like apply the scientific method and outline a clear experimentation plan for you to acquire data and crucially answers to those questions that you don't currently have answered. So again, keeping that focus on the market, on your customers, what do they need, what do they want, and use this process to get those answers basically. The other thing I would just say, let's just do kind of end it on a third one to do the magic triangle of like 3 pieces of advice. The last piece of advice that I would give entrepreneurs is to, let me see how to phrase this exactly, is to move fast and break things, is to don't overanalyze. As much as I'm sort of saying like have a plan, have some structure to like go about it. But at the same time, hopefully I'm not contradicting myself too much with that, is also like move fast, like execute. Make sure that like any time that you are spending that is on the planning and coming up with, okay, what's our assumptions? What are our hypotheses? What do we want to test out? What's the marketing plan or whatever? Make sure that you're at least equally matching that in execution. Don't get stuck in planning, in strategizing, in thinking, in talking. Make sure it, at the very least, equally 50-50 matches in terms of execution.
Interesting. Very powerful. Now, I also know you speak at a lot of events. You haven't spoken at my event just yet. You will next week.
Yeah.
But how to get started with that? Because that's always something interesting. I'm always curious how to get even started with the whole public speaking thing, but also how to get invited for more and more events. And, how does that work?
Yeah, sure. So for me, it was a very happy accident. I kind of stumbled upon it marketing my last business. So what I learned was, as a bootstrapped, self-funded founder, constraints create creative solutions, right? And I do believe that if you are overfunded, if you've got too much money, it leads to wastage and it leads to not discovering some of these other like efficient ways of working. And so for me, as a self-funded founder, I had to do as everything I could to build my business for free or next to nothing, as cheaply as possible. And so I kind of stumbled upon this whole personal brand thing, right? Like it was before this term even existed of like personal brand, but I saw that like posting consistently on LinkedIn, adding value, demonstrating my expertise, that was getting a lot of traction, and that was proving to be one of the top growth channels for my business. And so part of that was the public speaking, was going to conferences. I was already doing like pitching to new clients anyway. So the whole kind of public speaking game didn't feel like a million miles away from what I was already doing. And then building on that. So I'd say number one, depending on your goals for any founders listening to this. So number one is public speaking can be a powerful marketing channel for your business. If you then want to kind of graduate away from it just being a marketing channel and actually monetizing it as a revenue stream in and of itself, is a different ball game. And so what I've learned the hard way is that conferences do not pay you unless you're Gary Vee, right? So conferences, like, they do not have budgets for speakers. If you're lucky, they will cover your travel and your expenses. So that's a decision that you have to make if financially it makes sense for you. If you want to actually turn it into a commercial business, a revenue stream, and earn money from it, then you want to be offering it up more as workshops, as training, and go to places that do actually have the budgets, which aren't the conferences. So they could be the likes of larger corporates, bigger enterprises. What I've done is actually I've delivered opening keynote speeches for innovation centers that have actually got government funding, and they're kind of one-off, right? So it would just be like an annual conference, and they're bringing everyone together, like alumni, and they want to kind of motivate the troops and get them all set up for a fun day together. So I'm also figuring out, I'm also still learning like who has the budget to pay to bring in a speaker to deliver a talk, but that's kind of what I've learned so far.
Absolutely fascinating. Stephanie, if people want to reach out to you, and I know you already gave out your email, but what's the best way of doing so? Either it be for being on a podcast, having you as a speaker, or getting your services as a consultant. I mean, what's the best way of doing that?
LinkedIn and Instagram are my two top social media channels. Thankfully, there is only one Stephanie Melodia. So if you just type in my name, hopefully it's not too hard to find me. It's Stephanie with a PH. Melodia is like the word melody, but IA at the end of it. So if you just search my name on LinkedIn, I'm Steph Melodia on Instagram. I would love to hear back from you. So I already gave out my email address, stephanie@bloomltd.co.uk. I'd love to hear from you too. So if you are fundraising, I'd love to see your pitch deck. If you'd like me to come and speak on your podcast, if you want me to deliver a talk or give you some help with your marketing, then yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me, Ricardo. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The podcast is also sponsored by Notion.so. Notion is offering 6 months for free for new users. Make sure you check out our website, thestartupevents.co.uk, to redeem this offer. This podcast is also sponsored by startupnetworks.co.uk. Startup Networks, it's an online forum where you can find all the resources you need to run your startup, from grants to investors to tips and tricks on how to be successful in your startup. This podcast is also sponsored by ODEV Tech. ODEV Tech is your premier software development partner. Make sure you check them out at odev.tech.